Hello everyone, now we are in lesson 2. We are pretty sure that you are going to be able to write 100% and read 90% of Hangul at this lesson. After that, we are going to learn how to make the actual sentence from lesson 3. Okay, let's start. Have you studied lesson 1 thoroughly? Lesson 1 is as important as lesson 2 or 3, so if you don't understand the sound that each consonant and the vowel has, we strongly recommend you should go through lesson 1 over and over again until you get familiar with them, especially the video material. Now you are supposed to know after studying lesson 1, 14 consonants and 10 vowels, 11 compound vowels, 5 double consonants, position of vertically drawn vowels and horizontally drawn vowels in a block. The fact that Hangul is written in blocks and one block makes up one syllable. Okay, it's time to go deeper. In lesson 2, we are going to learn all 9 writing blocks, which are not as important as you think, and we'll provide you with more examples of each writing block, and we'll learn how to memorize all the writing blocks without memorizing them. That's why you don't have to worry about all the 9 writing blocks. We'll learn how to read Hangul and how to pronounce the final consonant of the block. We're gonna learn about the consonant cluster, but we are not gonna actually learn how to pronounce all the consonant clusters here because it's impossible, plus it's really unnecessary. But we'll learn what the consonant cluster is at least. And let's taste a little bit of Korean honorifics in this lesson. Some people use the term formal, informal, or polite, impolite when they are talking about Korean honorifics. I'm not saying that they are wrong, but the concept is not something exists in Western world. Asians might understand this. It's about age and relationship. We'll talk about it later again. As we told you, please do not be frustrated by the fact that there are 9 types of writing blocks in Hangul. You'll be familiar with all of them with the given examples here. You don't even have to try to remember. Don't worry. We named the blocks type 1, 2, 3, 4 in lesson 1, but they are not important at all. Forget them. You just need to remember the principle of the writing order in Hangul. It's quite easy to remember. We'll talk about this later again. Okay, we're gonna learn how to read Hangul from now on. We've already seen these 4 basic writing blocks. Let's not name them as type 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore. We write Hangul from left to right and from top to bottom, and you read Hangul in the same order you write. We are not going to explain further about the writing blocks here. We'll get back to them later. But you must remember that one block makes up one syllable. That is the thing that actually matters, and it's super important. That's enough for now. Whenever you write Hangul, you always start with the one consonant and add one vowel. One vowel means one single vowel or one compound vowel. Do you remember we learned about compound vowels in lesson 1? Yes, it's compound of 2 or 3 basic vowels. If it doesn't ring any bell, you really need to go back to lesson 1. How to position the vowel then? As we learned in use of lesson 1, if the vowel is drawn horizontally, put it on the bottom of the consonant. And if it's drawn vertically, put it on the right side of the consonant. No exception. You always write one consonant first and then put vowel. Vertical vowel on the right and horizontal vowel on the bottom. Okay? Compound vowels which are written vertically should be located on the right side of the consonant. It's so obvious, isn't it? Do not try to read this. They are just examples. Okay then, let's write the actual word. How about Hangeul? Can you write it in Hangul? What's the romanization of Han? H-A-N, right? Then let's draw the consonant first, as we learned. Put the consonant H first, which sounds like H in English. And put the vowel A on the right, because it's vertically drawn vowel. Then, where should we put N? Okay, now it's time to learn the initial, medial, and final in a Korean writing block. First, initial. Initial is the consonant that starts the block, and medial is the vowel part, not only vertically drawn vowels, but also horizontally drawn ones, and even compound vowels. They are all medial. And the final is the consonant or consonant cluster that ends the block. It's always put under the middle of first consonant and vertically drawn vowel, or under the horizontally drawn vowel. No exception. We haven't learned what consonant cluster is. Don't worry, we'll get back to that later. Exactly as you put N at the end of ha to make it han in English or romanization, you should put N consonant on the bottom of the block in Hangul. Because N consonant sounds like N in English, still sounds N when it comes as the final of the block. Are you with us? Han is a single syllable word, therefore you need to put it in a one block. And A is a vowel which is medial of the block. So the next consonant should be the final of the block. N should be the final of the block. Where should we put the final consonant in the block? Yes, under the middle of first consonant and the vertically drawn vowel, or under the horizontally drawn vowel. There's no horizontally drawn vowel here, so we can put it under the middle of first consonant and the vertically drawn vowel. Just to remind you, remember that initial is a consonant or a double consonant which comes first in a block. Medial is always a vowel or a compound vowel. Final is a consonant or a consonant cluster. That's it. Let's move on. I guess you already know what syllable means, but again, just to remind you, definition of a syllable is a part of a word that contains a single vowel sound and that is pronounced as a unit. For example, book has one syllable and reading has two syllables. How do we split the two-syllable word when we write it in a Hangul writing block? By a unit of a syllable, right? So reading has two syllables. Reading. Apple also has two syllables. Apple. Water has two syllables. Water. How about energy? It has three syllables. Energy. It can't go like energy, and you know why. The romanized word Hangeul consists of two syllables, right? In Korean, one block makes up one syllable. Therefore, you should write Han in one block and Gul in another block. Remember that the final consonant should be located at the bottom of the block. You might wonder how the consonants pronounce when they are used as the final in the block. Some of the websites might tell you that you should memorize the romanized Korean alphabet. As you see on the bottom of the page, first consonant kiok has the final consonant K according to the romanization rule. But we don't recommend you to memorize the romanized final sound of the consonants. There is a reason, so before you start memorizing them, please go to the next page. Okay, let's finish writing Hangul in Hangul. Let's draw Han first. Draw the initial consonant first. Its hit sounds like H, like H in English, right? Put the A vowel on the right because it's drawn vertically. And we need N sound for the final to make N sound. So we drew Han. Let's draw Gul. Draw the initial consonant first, which sounds like G. And draw the vowel, which sounds like U. And it goes under the initial consonant because this vowel drawn horizontally. Then how to make L sound? Add the final consonant L, which sounds like L. Sounds between R and L. Under the vowel because that's the position of the final consonant all the time. Now we finished drawing Hangul. How was it? It's not that difficult, is it? Okay then, let's talk about the final sound of each consonant. As you saw in the page 6, we need to know how each consonant sounds when they come as a final sound of the block. You can memorize all the romanized final sound, but it's gonna be even more confusing now or later. Plus, This is not a romanization learning material. Furthermore, you should not read Hangul by reading romanization. It's not helping after all. So what should we do? Don't worry, we will tell you. We just want you to think that the consonants sound the same wherever they go, the initial or the final, with a few exceptions. Let us give you an example. Please see the word written here. Can you read this? We read this pop. Pop means meal or cooked rice in Korea. It's funny, but this word pop is really important word in Korea. You will hear it plenty of times when you visit Korea. The correct romanization of this word is B-A-P, bop, because the final sound of the consonant B, biup, is P in romanization, and the initial sound is like B, B in romanization. This is exactly the tricky part, because its initial sound and final sound are different even though we use the same consonant B for both initial and final in the block. Please don't mix up the initial and the final sound of the consonant with the initial and the final of the block. Do you get it? We use the same term initial and the final for both the sound of the consonant and the first and the last consonant in the block. Again, the initial and the final sound of the consonant and the initial and the final of the block are totally different things. Therefore, don't mix up. Okay, let's get back to the learning materials. What if we spell this word B-A-B, bop, in romanization instead of B-A-P, bop? Does it sound different? B and P sound so different when they come as the final sound. Bop, B-O-B, bop, and B-O-P, bop sound so different even in English. The answer is no in Korean. What if someone shows you the romanized word B-A-P and asks you to convert it to Hangul? Would you be able to do that? B shall be converted to the consonant biup, which sounds B, and the vowel A shall be converted to the vowel A, right? How about the final P? Let's find the consonants which have P as the final sound in terms of romanization. There are actually two consonants, biup, which sounds B as an initial, and piup, which sounds P as an initial. Which one to use? Because romanize the final sound of both is the same P. This is exactly why we suggest not studying Korean romanization, because that makes it more confusing. Therefore, we believe that it is more important for you to understand the sound of Korean alphabet itself. So as soon as you see the Hangul letter, the sound of it should pop up in your head automatically. Okay, this is what we are going to do. We'll put it in two different ways to make you understand and memorize them easy. The first way, let's divide the consonants into three groups. Group 1, the consonants which have no problem to use the initial sound as the final sound. Group 2, the consonants which sound like romanization T or English alphabet T when it comes as the final sound. Group 3, exceptions. Only ing, u sound and hit, h sound fall into this group. It looks a little bit complicated, but it actually not. Let's not talk about the second way because we don't like it that much. Just read it yourself. Don't worry, we're gonna talk about it a little bit later. Just let's go to the next page and talk about the first way. On this page, we can see which consonant belongs to which group. Again, this lesson 2 is not the material to learn how each consonant sounds like. If you don't know how each consonant sounds like, we strongly recommend you should go back to lesson 1. But we'll read them again anyway for those who almost remember the sound of them. Let's take a look at the group 1 first. We'll tell you when it is the time for you to memorize them, so don't memorize them now. Just take a look at them and listen to our explanation here. The consonants in the group 1 are the ones that can use the initial sound as the final sound, which means you don't have to remember the final sound of each consonant in the group 1. Just remember the sound or the initial sound of them. For example, the initial sound of the first consonant is G, like G in English. And you don't have to remember the final sound of G because you can use the same sound for the final. Still don't get it? Don't worry. We'll show you an example on the next page. We'll read you the actual name of the consonants and the sound of them together one more time. Please see the consonants in the group 1. 그, 기역, 크, 키읔, 느, 니은, 르, 리을, 트, 티읕, 무, 미음, 브, 비읍, 프, 피읍. Okay, don't panic, just follow us. Let's just see what consonants in the group 2. 드, 디귿, 스, 시옷, 즈, 지읒, 츠, 치읒. You can see the romanized final sound of all these 5 letters is T. Therefore, you pronounce them T whenever they come as the final, just like the final sound of the romanization. We'll tell you later why we are talking about romanization for this group too, while we keep saying that don't see the romanization. Let's move on. And there are only 2 consonants in the group 3. Just read the study tip here if you want. We'll get back to them later. Okay, then let's find out why we said you can use the initial sound of the consonants in the group 1 as the final sound. See the consonant here. What does it sound like? G, right? Like G in English. How do you write the actual name of it in romanization? G-I-Y-E-O-K. 기역 starts with G and ends with K. But you need to see how we write it in Hangul. As you see here, when we write the actual name of the consonant 기역 in Hangul, we use the same consonant for the initial of the first block and the final of the second block. It shows the consonant 기역, which sounds G, has the same initial and the final sound. There is no K sound here actually. Let's see the romanization of this consonant 기역 again on the right in a bigger size. What if we replace the final letter K with the G? Because as we learned here, it actually has G sound as the final. Did the sound change completely? 기역 with a K and 기역 with a G. I don't think they sound so different, at least in Korean. They sound pretty much the same. This is exactly the point. Do you get it? Let's check out another example on the next page to understand this better. Can you read this word? For those who can't yet, we will let you know how to read this. Let's see the initial consonant first. It sounds H, like H in English, and add a vowel which sounds A, H, A, Ha. So it sounds Ha, H-A, Ha. And we added G sound, which sounds like G in English in the final. So how does this letter sound like? H, Ha, Hak, Hak, like H-A-G, Hak in romanization. According to the romanization rule, it has to be H-A-K, Hak. However, even though you use the initial sound G as the final sound, it will make the same sound Hak, H-A-G, Hak. We are not saying that it has to be H-A-G, Hak. Just it might be easier for you to naturally remember the sound of the consonant than memorize all the initial and the final sounds separately. Then how do you read the second letter? G, 요, 교, Hangul. So it's Hangeul, which means school in Korean. Again, this is not a romanization learning material, so you don't have to study Korean romanization rule here. Romanized letters are just references you use to understand the pronunciation better, nothing more. Therefore, you better understand the actual sound of the letter itself. Let's see one more word as an example of the consonant in the group 1. Teeth, which sounds T, like T in English. Can you read this one word shown in this page? It starts with P sound and add a vowel A. So it sounds Pa, like P-A in romanization. And what is the final consonant here? It's teeth, which sounds T, like T in English. So P, Pa, and Pat, like P-A-T, Pat in romanization, which means red bean in Korean. It's not that difficult, is it? Now you understand what we meant and why you don't have to remember the romanized final sound of the consonants. We'll give you more examples in usual lesson 2 after this. Don't worry about it. Okay, let's take a look at the consonants in the group 1 and the group 2 again. Can you recognize something has changed? We added teeth, which sounds T, like T in English, to the group 2 because it also has T as the final sound. It was included in the group 1 in the first place, while other consonants which have the final sound T were categorized as the group 2 because its initial sound is also T. But it can be also categorized as the group 2 because it has the final sound of T. Therefore, let's put it in the group 2 for a while. Just for a while. Confusingly, these 5 letters D, T, S, J, Ch have the same final sound T according to the romanization rule. But fortunately, 2 of them, D and T, are from the same sound family. If you don't understand what we are talking about, you need to go back to lesson 1. And 3 of them, S, J, Ch, are also from the one sound family. Now it gets a little bit easier to remember, isn't it? But don't memorize them now. The most important thing is they all sound T in terms of romanization when they come as a final sound in a block. But before you memorize them in that way, check out the next couple of pages first, because we want to move 디귿, which sounds D, like D in English, to the group 1, as well as 티읕, which sounds T, like T in English. We'll explain why we want to move them back to the group 1 in a couple of pages. Let's take a look at some examples first. Let's find out how 시옷, which sounds S, like S in English, sound like when it comes as a final. First, take a look at the full word and see the breakdowns. It starts with a consonant ch, which sounds like ch, like English ch, and add a vowel a, ch, a, cha. So it's cha. As we learned in the previous page, 시옷, which sounds like s, belongs to the group 2, and it sounds like t when it comes as a final sound. ch, a, at, ch, cha, chat. So the first letter sounds chat, chat, like C-H-A-T in romanization. It's not chat. And the second letter sounds like 그, 이, 일, 그, 기, 길. So it's 찻길, 찻길, which means road in Korean. Actually, this S consonant takes really important part in Hangul. It's used for several poses. The final S consonant here is used to connect two nouns and make them one word. 차 without S consonant in the final is a car. 길 is a street. 차 plus 길 is 찻길. 찻길, which means road. Let's learn about this usage of S consonant later again. One more thing. Please take a look at the Hangul letters on the bottom left. If you dig up to the Korean dictionary, it is said that the 찻길 with S consonant as a final actually pronounced 찻길 with D consonant in the final. Confusing, isn't it? They actually sound exactly the same in reality, and it applies all the consonants in the group 2. Korean dictionary says all the consonants in the group 2 are pronounced 디귿, which sounds D like D when they come as the final in the block. You can memorize them that way instead of memorizing the romanized final sound T. I know it's very confusing now. Again, we say the consonants in the group 2 are pronounced romanized alphabet T when they are used as a final, but they are actually pronounced 디귿, which sounds D like D in English in terms of the Korean alphabet pronunciation rule. Does it make sense? Don't worry, we'll explain more about it in a couple of pages. Let's take a look at two more examples for the consonants in the group 2. First consonant is 지읒, which sounds J like J in English, but it sounds romanized alphabet T when it comes as a final sound, or 디귿 like D as we've just explained. Let's take a look at the entire word first. It's two-syllable noun. Let's read the breakdown. 느, 아, 앗 like 느, 나, 낫. Okay? The second letter, 즈, 아, 즈, 자, 잠, 낮잠, 낮잠, which means midday nap. How about the second word with the final consonant, 치, which sounds ch as an initial, but it sounds romanized alphabet T when it comes as a final. Let's read the breakdown. It's a one-letter word. Do you remember this double consonant? It sounds 끄, 끄, 꼬, 꽃, 꽃. Do you understand the sound? 꽃, which means a flower in Korean. Let's learn how 디귿, which sounds D like D in English, sounds like when it comes as a final sound. We can't think of any noun example with D consonant as a final, so this is the first verb example. For now, 디귿, D sound is categorized as a part of the group 2, which means it sounds like romanized alphabet T when it comes as a final in a block. So if we read the first letter, it would be 그, 거, 것, right? 것. Because the final 디귿, D consonant is supposed to sound like romanized alphabet T. Okay? This is the basic form or infinitive of the verb walk. 걷다, 걷다. Do you remember what we mentioned about the final sound of D consonant? We told you that it looked like D consonant was supposed to be a part of the group 1. We'll show you why we said that. Let's replace T with D in the romanized pronunciation of this word. 걷다, 걷다. Do you think it sounds so different if we use the initial sound D of 디귿 as a final sound? We think it sounds almost the same. It looks even more reasonable. 걷다, 걷다. We don't mind if you memorize this D consonant as the group 1. which means you don't have to memorize the final sound of it, okay? Please take a look at these 4 letters drawn here. Can you read these? These 4 letters sound exactly the same even though each letter has the different final consonant. They are all read not. You already understand the reason why the first 3 letters have got T as the final sound in their romanization. How about the last one? Digut is used as a final, and the initial sound of digut is D, like D in English. We learned that we can use the initial sound of D consonant as a final sound so that you don't have to remember the final sound separately, right? So let's put D in romanization as the final to the last one. How does it sound like? N, na, nad, nad. Okay? If you look into the Korean dictionary, it is said that not with the short S consonant as a final actually sounds like not with the digut D as a final. A little bit confusing, isn't it? Again, in Korea, we actually think that all the consonants in the group 2, S, J, Ch consonants sound digut D consonant like D in English when they come as the final of the block, which supports what we explained about the final sound of D consonant here and in the previous page. We don't mind if you memorize S, J, and Ch consonants sound like D, D when they come as the final. Just remember that these 3 consonants, S, J, Ch, sound the same when they come as a final, and it can be either T or D in romanization. Okay, then let's see what we have in group 1, 2, and 3 again. Most of the consonants belong to the group 1 according to our theory, which means you don't have to memorize the final sound of most of the consonants. And there are only 3 consonants in the group 2. Then let's learn about the consonants in the group 3. In the group 3, there are only 2 consonants. The first one is iung, which sounds U. We already told you that this consonant doesn't have any sound actually. But when it comes as a final in a block, it makes the same sound that NG makes in English. We'll show you the example on the next page. The second consonant is hyut, which sounds H, like H in English. When it comes as a final in a block, it tends to be a silence and is mixed with the sound of the initial consonant in the next block, or it disappears completely. Let's go to the next page and see what we are talking about. Let's see the example of the final sound of iung, U consonant. We keep using the actual name of the consonant while we are saying that it's not necessary to memorize the actual name of them. Not because it's necessary, but because it's just the simplest way to call it. So please understand. Okay, let's read the word on this page together. Let's start with the first consonant. How does it sound like? Ku, right? And add a vowel, O. So it's like ku, O, ko, right? And how does the round thing on the bottom sound like? It sounds like NG in English. Some might not understand what it means. It sounds like NG of wing, king, or ring. It has sound, okay? So, ku, ko, kung, kung, okay? As you already know, the consonant ing does not have any sound as an initial consonant in a block. But as a final, ing sounds exactly like ng of wing, king, or ring. If you think of it this way, it would be easier to remember. We told you that ing sounds like u when we have to make a sound of it as an initial with open throat. And it sounds when it comes as a final with the same open throat. So it's kind of in the same line. It's easy, but it's also very important because there are plenty of words which use ing as the final in Korean. Then how we read the second letter? Ku, ki, 기. So it's 공, 기, 공기, which means air in Korean. Let's learn how the consonant hid, which sounds h, like h in English, sounds like when it is used as a final in a block. We can't think of any noun example with a final h consonant. This is the first adjective example. We're gonna tell you that this one is a little bit tricky. Please check how this adjective looks like first. We can see the initial consonant, j consonant, which sounds like J in English, and the vowel O right under it. The vowel is positioned under the initial consonant because it's horizontally drawn vowel. And the final h consonant is positioned under the vowel. This is the basic form of the adjective good in Korean. Verbs in English change their forms according to the tense. Verbs in Korean also change their forms. Adjectives in English don't change their forms according to the tense because there is be verb. But adjectives in Korean change their forms according to the tense as verbs do. So adjectives in Korean look almost the same as verbs. That's why Korean adjectives have basic forms as verbs have infinitives, which are basic form of verbs. Let's take a look at the romanization of this word. Let's read it. 좋다, J-O-T-A, 좋다. Weird, isn't it? Where has h consonant in the final of the first block gone? And where did this t sound in the initial of the second block come from? Don't worry, we'll give you a quick answer. You see the final h consonant on the bottom left? We don't really pronounce this. Let's say this is a silence. Or you can think this h consonant in the final moves up to the initial consonant in the next block and it adds one more stroke to the initial of the next block. So the initial of the second block sounds d like d in English originally, but it changes its sound to t like T in English because of the final h consonant in the formal block. Well, we are not just saying there is a certain rule like this in Korean grammar. When this h consonant combines with k, t, or ch consonant, it makes k, t, ch, adding one more stroke to the original consonant. Okay? Don't worry, move on. We'll show you more examples later. So it pronounces 좋다, 좋다, when you actually read or say this word. That's it. The point is, this h consonant is a silence. Just remember that for now. So this is the page you should remember. Most of the consonants belong to the group 1, which means you will not have any problem to understand the final sound even though you just know the initial sound of the most of the consonants. Again, you just need to know the initial sound of the consonants in the group 1. There are only 3 consonants in the group 2, and they sound like English alphabet T or D when they are used as a final in the block. 2 consonants in the group 3 are sort of exceptions. The round empty consonant sounds like English NG in wing, ring, or king. h consonant is a silence when it's used as a final. That's it. We already over-explained everything, so we don't think you need further explanations. We said that there are 2 ways to understand the final sound of each consonant, and this page shows the other way. Frankly, we don't recommend this, but we'll explain at least. If you use the second way to remember the final sound of the consonants, it means you will get to memorize the final sounds of the romanization of the consonants. So, k have the final sound K. We don't even need to explain why, because the final sound of the romanization is K. P have the final sound P, and T, S, J, Ch, H have the final sound T, but H is a silence in the final. L consonant has the final sound L. N consonant has the final sound N. M consonant has the final sound M. Ing, U consonant has the final sound NG. It might look easier to remember for foreigners, I don't know, but we really don't recommend this way. We recommend the first way because it will help you understand better the mixture sound of the final in the formal block and the initial of the letter block. Do you understand what it means? You already seen the example of one of those. Let's talk about this later again. Now it's time to learn all the 9 writing blocks. Wait a minute, I'll correct myself. Now it's time to see how the 9 writing blocks look like. You don't really have to learn them. There is a reason why we didn't learn these 9 writing blocks in the first place. Because it's not as important as you think. So we'd rather not waste our time to explain about these all 9 writing blocks. But just take a look at them yourself. The yellow stands for the initial consonant, and the blue is the medial vowel, and the green is the final consonant. We don't want to talk about this anymore. Let's go to the next page. Oh wait, take a look at the ones which are displayed in the bottom left and the middle. Strangely, there are 2 consonants in the final. We call this consonant cluster. Actually, the 2 same consonants in the final are not consonant cluster. But just between us, when there are 2 consonants in the final of the block, let's call it all a consonant cluster. Who cares? Okay, let's move on. Let's just take a look at how the consonants and vowels are positioned in a block in this page. No more. Just remember, when you write Hangul, always write from the left to the right. And write in order of initial, medial, and final all the time. When there is a compound vowel in medial, write the bottom one first because it's on the left. When there is 2 consonants called consonant cluster in the final, write the left one first. Again, you don't have to memorize them. You shouldn't. You just need to know a couple of principles. We're gonna talk about it on the next page. Just hold on. Okie dokie, let's take a look at the first block. We are trying to write ta, like yes in Russian. Ta. How do you write it? The initial consonant first all the time and the vertically drawn vowel on the right. Okay? Let's write tak this time. We used K for the final in romanization because it's romanization. But we already told you that you can think that K consonant still sounds K consonant like G when it comes as a final. Anyway, initial consonant first and the vertically drawn vowel on the right, and then the final K consonant on the bottom. Let's see the block with a consonant cluster. T consonant comes first in the block, it's an initial, and medial A vowel comes. It's read ta until now, but then bang, 2 consonants are stuffed in the final. We call this a consonant cluster. We are not going to talk about the pronunciation of the consonant cluster here, but just remember that you never pronounce both of the consonants in a consonant cluster. This time, the L consonant on the left is a silence. You don't pronounce L consonant in the final. You only pronounce K consonant in the final. Therefore, the actual pronunciation of this word is the same as the one above it. Tak. Tak, okay? Let's speed up a little bit. Let's see how to write the word with the horizontally drawn vowel. The initial consonant first and the horizontally drawn vowel. The next one is with a final consonant. You put the final consonant under the horizontally drawn vowel. The same thing applies when there is a consonant cluster in a block. And let's take a look at the word with a compound vowel. You need to see this one a little bit close because we never talked about the position of a compound vowel. The initial consonant comes first always, and you write the horizontally drawn vowel first because it's on the left. No exception. And then you write the vertically drawn vowel on the right. That's it. It's important, but it's simple. Then where should we put the final consonant with a compound vowel? Yes, you are correct. On the bottom of the block, under the horizontally drawn vowel, or between the horizontally drawn vowel and the vertically drawn vowel. We don't care where you think you put it, just remember the position. And we cannot think of any example with a compound vowel with a consonant cluster. Maybe there's none. We'll see. This is a super important page. Okay, forget all the blocks. Forget them completely. We just need a one block to explain them all. This is the easiest way to understand all Korean writing blocks without memorizing them. The basic principle is to write in order of initial, medial, and final all the time. No exception. So step 1. Always the initial consonant first. Always, all the time. Step 2. And then write the vowel in the medial. When there is a compound vowel in the medial, write the bottom one first because it's on the left. Step 3. Write the final. When there are two consonants called consonant cluster in the final, write the left one first. That's all. You finished the learning all the Korean writing blocks with this one page. We told you, it is easy. You already know how to position a compound vowel in a block. So let's take a look at the example here. Are you familiar with this compound vowel on this page? You already know this vowel is the compound of O and E vowel. You also know that O plus E sound almost the same as O plus E sound. Oe, we. In reality, okay? So it's pronounced we. If you don't understand what we're talking about here, you need to go back to lesson 1 or just keep going with the lesson 2. We'll give you more examples later. Okay, let's read the word. The initial consonant sounds h plus compound vowel we. So it's pronounced hui, h, we, hui, which means raw fish or sashimi in Korean. When you add a vowel to the consonant, you add a horizontally drawn vowel O first, and then put E vowel on the right. You already know that. Let's see the example for the compound vowel wa. You already know how this compound vowel is pronounced. Wa, right? O plus a, wa, wa. Okay? Let's put the consonant g and see how it's pronounced. G, 고, 과, 과. Okay? Or 그, 와, 과. Okay? It's not that difficult. Let's take a look at one more fancy letter with a compound vowel. It's we vowel. U, e, ue, we. The romanization looks like we in English, but you already know it sounds like u plus e. In lesson 1, we already told you that it would not be a good idea to see romanization of these compound vowels to remember the pronunciations. Let's put u consonant, which is empty sound consonant. Since u consonant doesn't have any sound besides the empty u sound with the open throat, when it combines with a vowel without any final consonant, the entire block makes the same sound that the vowel has. So this letter makes the same sound that we vowel has. It's just we with the u consonant as an initial. Let's learn about consonant cluster on this page. You don't really need to spend much time to study consonant clusters. Just see what it is here and move on. There are not so many consonant clusters used in reality. You think that you see a lot of them because you are not familiar with them. We'll show you some examples in usual lesson 2. Anytime we see another consonant cluster while we are studying, we'll explain it again. As you see on this page, when there are two consonants in the final of the block, we call it consonant cluster. That's it. Let's move on. You already know there is honorifics in Korean, don't you? Korean grammar uses an extensive system of honorifics to reflect the speaker's relationship to the subject of the sentence and speech levels to reflect the speaker's relationship to the audience. Too difficult? Don't worry, we'll make it as easy as possible. Some divide the form of Korean language into formal and informal, or polite and impolite, but we want to divide it into informal and honorifics. And honorifics is again divided into formal and casual. Someone's age is a very good indicator when you have to choose to use whether informal or honorifics. Then, who you use the informal form to? Listen carefully, this is very important. You use informal form to someone who is very close to you, or to friends whose age is equal to or younger than yours. When your friend is older than you, but if he or she is very close to you, you can still use the informal form to them. Do you understand? You don't use informal form to just acquaintances. Then, when do you use honorifics? You use honorifics to any stranger or to someone whose age is older than yours, even just 1 year older, and to anyone who is not that close to you, and to someone who you think he or she deserves honorifics. Formal honorifics is used in a formal document or in a military. You can still use formal honorifics in a conversation, especially when the environment is relatively formal, like in company life, but it will sound too formal sometimes. That's why this formal honorific is used in a military. Remember that. Casual honorific is used in an everyday conversation. There are honorific verbs and adjectives with the honorific suffix and higher respect nouns. It can be a little bit difficult for you to learn higher respect nouns, but don't worry, let's learn it by doing. Just remember that you should use honorifics when you meet any Korean for the first time. So we are going to learn how to use honorifics in our lessons first. Korean honorific verbs and adjectives end in the suffix yo, 니다, or 니까. They are added to the end of verbs and adjectives and turn them into honorifics. We're gonna mainly use the honorific suffix yo in our learning materials, at least at level 1, because that's the one which is commonly used in a normal everyday conversation. Then what's the difference between the honorific suffix 니다 and yo? I'll say 니다 is a bit more formal and yo is more casual than 니다. For example, in a textbook or any official document, 니다 is used normally. yo is used more in an ordinary conversation. Let's take a look at the interrogative honorific suffix 니까 in the middle of the page. 니까 is used for formal interrogative phrase or sentences. You know renowned Korean greeting 안녕하세요, don't you? Have you heard of it before? If you use the honorific suffix 니까, it goes like 안녕하십니까. Okay? Just an example, no need to learn it right now. The suffix yo is very useful because you can use it for both declarative and interrogative sentence. Declarative sentence means normal sentence. Interrogative sentence means question sentence with a question mark. Finally, you've learned all the basics about Korean alphabet. From now on, you're gonna learn how to make the actual sentence from lesson 3. Before that, let's see some useful and simple phrases you use every day. First one, the renowned Korean greeting 안녕하세요, which means hi or hello. 안녕하세요. We don't think you need any pronunciation advice for this one. 안녕하세요. Then how do we say how are you in Korean? Koreans don't say how are you that much, but 안녕하세요 is actually a question to ask someone if she or he is okay. So you can put a question mark at the end so that it can mean how are you. We have another how are you type of question in Korean, but let's not learn it here because we don't use it that much. Then how do we say how do you do in Korean? There is no direct translation for how do you do in Korean. So you can still say 안녕하세요 instead when you meet someone for the first time. We'll break down 안녕하세요 for your better understanding. So listen carefully, it's very interesting. First, we split the phrase into three parts. 안녕, 하세, and 요. Do you know what it's going to be like if we directly translate 안녕, 하세요 into English? It's going to be like, are you fine? Are you okay? Or are you well? Let's say it's more like, are you well? Let's take a look at the first part. 안녕. 안녕 means hi or hello, or literally wellness as a noun. You can use it as a greeting to your friends or someone whose age is equal to or younger than yours without 하세요 part. So it takes the place of the adjective well in the English sentence, are you well? How about the second part, 하세? 하세 is a part of the ending of a verb or an adjective which acts like a bridge between the stem 안녕 and the honorific suffix 요. Let's not dig deeper. 하세 is just an honorific form which is used to turn 안녕 part into an adjective. So it takes the place of be verb are in the English sentence, are you well? 하세 is sometimes used as a verb do. So anyway, it takes the verb part. The last part, 요. 요 is just an honorific suffix. No need for the explanation. 요 itself doesn't contain any inherent or implicit meaning. No meaning. But it takes a role as an honorific suffix which is used to show some respect to the audience. Subject is quite often removed from sentences or phrases in Korean language. So we can say that the subject you is omitted or understood here. So in a nutshell, 안녕 is well, and 하세 is are, and 요 is an honorific suffix, and the subject you has been removed. Got it? You don't have to study or dig deeper this page. We just added this page to let you taste the structure of the Korean sentence a little bit. Because everybody says 안녕하세요, but nobody really knows what's in it. Okay? But no need to study anything now. Do you want to see one more useful and simple phrase, which means please start your meal or please have your meal? Do you guys use this phrase in your country often? Do you remember we told you that the word 밥, which means meal or cooked rice, is important in Korea? This one is kind of on the same line. It's funny, but this phrase is also very important in Korea. Imagine that there are people around the dinner table and you are the host or hostess. The host may want to say, you can start your meal. Or your father is on upstairs and you want to go tell him that the dinner is ready. These kinds of situations are exactly where you use this phrase. 식, 사, 하, 세, 요. 식사하세요. 식사하세요. Compare this page to the previous one with the breakdown of 안녕하세요. Let's split this phrase into three parts again. 식사, 하세, and 요. If we directly translate 식사하세요 into English, it would be please do or eat your meal. 식사 is the higher respect form of the noun 밥, which means meal or cooked rice. Remember that this is a noun. Now you see the first higher respect form of noun. So 식사 takes place of meal in English. 하세. 하세 here is used as the most basic verb do to turn the noun 식사 into a verb. So there are many nouns can be a verb when they combine with the verb do in Korean. Don't think too much, just listen to our explanation and forget it and move on. Just feel it. And 요 is the honorific suffix, as you already know. Well, you can say that this honorific suffix 요 is used in exchange of please. Okay? Whatever you want. So have you already found the common parts between two phrases? No, you don't have to. Just fill it and move on. We are not going to break down simple phrases in this lesson anymore. Just take them as they are here and let's see what's going on next. Now, amazingly, you've learned all about writing while you are learning about reading. And there's no more. You have already learned 90% of reading. You will be learning the rest 10% by doing. Let's practice some writing with some real words in usual lesson 2 before it gets really boring. Please check out the list of the things you are supposed to know now. 14 consonants and 10 vowels, 11 compound vowels, 5 double consonants, how to fill out the block and draw individual letter in order. The fact that Hangul is written in blocks and one block makes up one syllable. How to read a consonant when it comes as the final in the block. What is consonant cluster? And Korean honorific verbs and adjectives end in the suffix yo or nida in declarative sentences and yo or nika in interrogative sentences. Let me tell you something. Do not be frustrated by the things you don't understand here, such as consonant cluster. It's not about writing. You already know how to write it. It's all about spelling and reading. Maybe you have to memorize it later because there is no rule for it. Okay, now you are ready. Go make some real sentences from lesson 3. Since you've chosen to learn the alphabet first, we are not going to provide you with the romanization from the next lesson unless it's necessary, so you better master it in this lesson. See you in lesson 3.